is Jay. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. Jay Stongo, Gary Fife, Jahojifkados.
Jessica McBride, Jahojifkados.
Welcome to our program, Mvskoke Radio. This week we have the honor of having our National Council Speaker, Lucian Tiger III, join us for our program. And we thought we would work him over a little bit here today and see what it's been like to take on the job. Let's just jump right into it. I think we should. One thing I've always liked to hear about from our guests is you've got a job that you knew was going to be a little challenging, shall we put it kindly, and there were already issues on the table that you would have to tackle when they came in. But you've come through your first year, and a little more as we look at our calendar. But what's it been like? I mean, I know you've got probably a few extra gray hairs or something like that, but you tell me, what's the first year like?
Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you very much for having me. It's always interesting to interview with Mr. Fife, to say the least. But it's been a very busy year. A lot of things have happened, mostly to the positive. A lot of controversial things came up, through healthcare, things such as that. It's definitely something that you don't know what to expect until you're actually in the role. Speaker Yahola has definitely helped me a lot, advised me in many different ways on how to handle certain situations, and I really appreciate the help he's given me as well as the guidance. It's definitely a lot more challenging than you might think. Citizens, seem to come out of the woodwork and want to ask questions, be more involved. They trust in all of us as representatives, because that's something that we all have to understand is one representative can't do anything by themselves.
What we'd like to do is invite our listeners to join us in this discussion today. We're going to open up our phone lines and give us a call, 918-756-3646. Now, forgive my rudeness there, Mr. Tiger, so please continue.
Man, see, now Mr. Fife really put me on the spot. Open up the phone lines. Thank you, Mr. Fife. But go back to where I was. It takes majority vote of the council representatives to accomplish anything. One representative can't accomplish anything by themselves. So it's either going to take 8 votes as a majority, or legislation that's 2/3 votes is going to take 11 of the full council. So it's something that I think that we as council have helped educate our citizens on. We are all one, whether legislation passes or fails, whether you support it or don't support it, it's still council as a whole has passed that legislation, or council as a whole, that legislation failed. But there's a lot of challenges that we face. The healthcare was a big obstacle that had to be addressed. I think Chief Floyd has done the best that he could with the hand he was dealt. I don't think any of us really knew what was going on in healthcare. The last year, 2016, we received a lot of information that we were unaware of, and I was on the HUE committee, 14 and 15. There's just a lot of numbers that weren't presented to us. And there's a lot of things that we as council as a whole would have done differently had the true numbers been presented to us. Nobody wants to see the nation in that kind of deficit, and it's going to take a group effort, not only from the elected officials, but also from the employees as well as the citizens to get us back on the right track. It's going to take, in my opinion, it might take as long as 3 years to get on the right path in the healthcare. But there are also a lot of other things that I feel that council helped accomplish through 2016, and I'm just going to go over a list of things that I did write down and bring on that. We did the church, camp house, and ceremonial ground grant. That gives them up to $7,000 to work on the campgrounds there and the arbors at the grounds and their camp houses. Also, it's the 3rd year to offer financial assistance to traditional churches for heating expenses, whether it be propane, firewood, electric, anything like that. Also, in the education, we created the Emergency Vocational and Technical Scholarship Fund. And that's through education and training, because there was a gap where we were losing, we're unable to help citizens because they were falling through the cracks when it was to technical schools, so on and so forth. There wasn't any funding available for them, so we were able to address that. The College of the Mvskoke Creek Nation got their accreditation, and that's something that is definitely going to benefit the nation as a whole with them being accredited. Eufaula Clinic, we had the groundbreaking for it in October. That's going to be a great facility when it is open. Also, Margaritaville, the hotel opened in December. Gaming is the main funding source to the nation. That's something that the nation obviously excels at. We do really well on that. And the addition of the hotel, the new entertainment venue, the Cove, it's definitely going to help the nation prosper and grow in gaming, because it's like anything else, you have to keep up with the competition. And unfortunately, our competition is right across town, with that being the Hard Rock. And this right here definitely puts us, in my opinion, ahead of the game in that aspect. And then we also had Flying T opened at Riverwalk last year in July. That's bringing a lot of people to the Riverwalk, which is helping Riverwalk. It's 95% at capacity right now, which is great. It's come a long way. Healthcare, again, we go back to that. Wetumpka Clinic, the council decided to appropriate extra funding to open Wetumpka Clinic back up to 5 days. It had been reduced to 2 days because it was losing approximately $50,000 a month. But council decided, it's something that we believed in. Our citizens need the extra assistance down there health-wise, even though it's only 15, 20 miles from Okemah. There are a lot of our citizens in the south that just can't make the trip and don't have any way to make that trip to Okemah. So council approved the legislation to open that back up for the rest of the fiscal year for 5 days, and that started last week, I believe. Last week is when they opened back up 5 days. And then also we established the Electoral Process Review Committee, which they've brought a lot of ideas to council. They updated us a month ago on some of the ideas they have that would help the election process, as well as they work with the election board. That's a very positive thing. There's a lot of things I think needed to be addressed through the election board. And also, we had some property that was on the agenda last month. I know that wasn't in 16, but we bought some property across from River Spirit. Definitely needed to purchase that. It was 27.1 acres. In my opinion, I think we should own all the land we can that's right around River Spirit, because that is our main money maker. Very good purchase. That was on the agenda. It showed up as stocks, because actually you purchased the whole business. It was a mobile home park, all the assets that go along with that, including the land. The main reason we needed that was for the land. Like I say, it's right across the street from River Spirit. The legislative branch in the past, sometimes they work well with the executive branch, sometimes they don't. We're not always going to agree on everything, but so far through 16 and into 17, I believe the council has a great working relationship with the executive branch, and it's definitely nice for that to happen and for our citizens to see that both branches can get along. Doesn't mean we'll always agree, but yes, through this point in time, as of now, we do get along really well.
At some points, back several years ago, you saw the executive branch and the National Council not getting along. What have you and Chief Floyd worked toward to improve that relationship, and so that y'all can make the best decisions possible for the citizens?
I don't think there's any improvement that's been made. Chief Floyd and I have gotten along really well from the time from the inauguration, basically. We're just honest with each other when things come forward. He asks my opinion, and I give him my opinion as a single representative, not necessarily as a speaker, but just as a regular representative, just like 16 of us are all elected officials. I just have a little bit more duties now than some of them, but we just have a mutual respect for each other. And he asks questions, I ask questions. We don't get blindsided by anything, and we don't always agree on everything, but we make it work one way or the other. And if we don't agree, we're able to explain to the other one why we don't agree. What we could do to make it a little bit better, tweak it in some way, shape, or form. One
of the things you brought up previously was your time on the HUE committee during 2014 and 2015, and you kind of brought up the health crisis. The council wasn't getting numbers and things like that. Would you say that council and the executive branch are being more transparent with each other now?
Absolutely, yes, as well as the health care department as a whole. We have a good relationship. There were several acting secretaries of health in 16, and we had a good relationship with all of them. They came in, they gave us numbers, provided us information of why we were in the situation we were in. They've been very forthcoming with a lot of information that was very beneficial to us as council, where we could make much better decisions on how to move forward and how to help healthcare itself get out of the deficit that they're in.
There's been, citizens point fingers. They want someone to place the blame on for the health deficit and the state of the finances for the nation. And we're not here, of course, to point fingers. But what would you say that council is doing differently to prevent a deficit like this from happening again?
Again, it would go back to the transparency. The health department now, especially with Mr. Terry in, he is going to give us a report, I believe, in the next week or two on the path that he would like to see the healthcare department go in. And, the hospital is one of the main issues. It hasn't made any money. It continues to lose money on a monthly basis. So we have to decide as elected officials what's the best interest of the nation on how do you offset that. Are we going to be able to offset $500,000 to $1 million a month deficit with one facility? Is that something we want to continue to take on? There's a lot more to it than us as citizens and us as elected officials actually noticed and knew, because that's just definitely not something that you would want to take on. If you know there's going to be a deficit like that, it's hard to overcome that, because healthcare is never going to be able to offset that type of deficit. So that's something we need to consolidate, maybe look at consolidating. There's just a lot of things, factors that go into that. So it's definitely still a complicated issue, and it's something we struggle with because we have a lot of employees that work out there, and we definitely don't want them to lose their jobs. It would be something where we need to make sure there's somewhere for those employees to go if it came to something that was going to be shut down. Is it going to be shut down at this point in time? No, that's not something that we're discussing. But I'm just looking down the future. You can't continue to lose $1 million a month on a facility. It makes it hard on the nation as a whole.
We'd like to remind our listeners you can call in with a question or text a question to us. It's the same number, 918-756-3646. You mentioned, of course, the transparency situation with the healthcare deficit. And there have been a lot of fiscal efforts to try and make up that financial gap. First, we heard of a $68 million loan, and then later on a much larger amount. For our listeners who haven't been able to fill in or follow up with all of that, could you kind of give us an idea of where we are then as far as the council is concerned with that financial situation? Are we paid up? We got enough money? Are we still a little tense?
Yes, sir. We started out, the chief executive branch brought to us that the healthcare total dollar amount that was in the red was approximately $65 million. And we got together with several of the entities that we have money invested in or have loans through, and it was brought to our attention that the best thing to do was go back and use a loan that we had from Merrill Lynch. And with that being said, it was at an extremely low rate, and it has been in place for approximately 5 years since we built the original River Spirit Casino. Just some language had to be changed in there. And we also rolled in the Eufaula Clinic, which is a joint venture. It's rolled in there. So that's how it came to a total of $90 million. And the $90 million, $25 million of that is for the Eufaula Clinic. And like I say, that is a joint venture, IHS joint venture. And the other $65 million, healthcare will take care of and will pay for, and the third-party collections have increased from roughly $2 to $2 million to now it's anywhere between $4.5 and I believe they might have even touched $5 million on a monthly basis. So the collections, third-party revenue collections, are much better, and that's what's going to help offset and take care of this debt.
Now, when we say third-party revenue, this is the ability of the nation to bill entities like Medicare, Medicaid, and Citizens Insurance that they may bring into IHS facilities. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
And it sounds like it's working. It's almost doubled in this particular period. Is it caused somebody cracked the whip, you think, and said, okay, we got to get a little hotter on making these collections happen?
I don't know if it's necessarily cracking the whip or not. I think it was just a lot of explanation, a lot of better explanation of the job requirements. Make sure that you do ask those citizens that come in, whether they're a citizen or not, when they come in, make sure that we ask for their insurance, their Medicare, their Medicaid, and let them understand that it's not going to affect them. It just helps the nation recoup funds. And that was one of the main things. There was a big misunderstanding because a lot of our citizens, I believe, didn't want to provide their insurance because they didn't want it to have an adverse effect and hurt them in any way, shape, or form. And we explained to them, that's not the case. It just helps us collect monies.
Well, that's a legitimate point there. When I first was asked about that same question, I was a little hesitant, wondering, what happens now? Gonna get bills from a few people here, co-pays and things like that, but that was not the case, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, to kind of change the subject a little bit, we published in the February 15th edition of the Mvskoke Nation News an update on Mvskoke Creek citizen Dan Kirby and his resignation as a state official, a state representative. I believe we published in that edition that the executive branch had sent him a letter asking him to resign as the athletic commissioner on January 16th. When we contacted the public relations office, they said he was still athletic commissioner as of February 6th, and then the National Council sent him a letter asking for his resignation February 7th. Do you have an update on the situation, if he has in fact resigned, or what council is looking at doing here in the future, as far as, because I believe the executive branch letter said that it was going to be turned over to the National Council to pursue, and I assume that's regarding code as far as like removal of officers is concerned. But I wanted to see if you had a date or any new information that we could have.
Yes, ma'am. Chief and I met with Mr. Dan Kirby last Friday. We visited with him for about 45 minutes, and he gave us a lot of information that he felt was pertinent to him not resigning. And I told him, in my opinion, it wasn't any individual's choice. He asked if he could come and speak in front of the council, and I told him yes, I would put him on the agenda for the 21st planning meeting on February 21st, and let him visit with the council as a whole to give his side of the story, because Chief did send a letter to him that he has not responded to, as well as council. We sent a letter out to him last week as well. He did receive it. We discussed that. I asked him to hold on to that letter until after he had a chance to visit with council as a whole to explain to them what his side of the story may or may not be. And the main thing that I have an issue with, and I did explain to Mr. Kirby that the problem I had with it was innocent people don't resign. And that's the main thing that I have an issue with, and I explained that to him, and he explained his side of it, and it definitely makes you think. But the end perception is, like again, most of the time, innocent people don't resign, and I would fight to the end if it were me in Mr. Kirby's position. I wouldn't have given in, and that's what I told him. And I understand that he's a citizen. I appreciate the fact that he did come and speak with Chief and myself. And like I say, he will be back again on February 21st to visit with council as a whole. And I explained to him, after we do meet, I will poll the council and see what the consensus of the council is. Do we want him to still give his resignation, or do we not?
What is the importance of this particular action, do you think? He's not been through a court of law or anything like that. He's been through the court of public opinion, and right now that's not too supportive of him. Is it because of his perception of being associated with this situation? And some of the information that he did share, I think personally, was he made some bad choices there. So, why is this important now?
Yes, he definitely did admit that some of the choices he made were not good. He said he should have rethought, shouldn't have taken those actions. It was unacceptable. He made the mistake, but he did let Chief and I know that he was never found guilty of sexual harassment, which that is the case. No, that is factual. But again, if it would have went to a vote of the representatives, he doesn't know, nobody knows if he would have passed where he was not removed. And that's the main question. Again, that's why I go back to, I just wish he would not have resigned. I wish he would have stayed and checked the vote. But he also explained, if he would have been removed, he would have lost his pension. and things like that. And I can understand that as well. It's just a very, very touchy situation. It's one of those, and I agree, the public perception, he was guilty and had to prove himself innocent, and that's not how it should be. The way it was handled was not very professional, was not good for the state of Oklahoma, wasn't good for Mvskoke Creek Nation, because again, he is a citizen of Mvskoke Creek Nation, and it does put us all in a difficult position. I understand the public perception can ruin your credibility, and that's kind of what happened to Mr. Kirby. Nobody's really asked to hear his side of the story, and that's why, again, I'm going to give him the opportunity to speak to us as a council as a whole and give us his side of the story. That he was on a radio show in Oklahoma City or Tulsa, I don't remember which one it was, but it was a 38-minute interview, and I did listen to that interview, sent that out to several of the representatives. I don't remember when, but it's definitely something that you need to listen to. And again, it just goes back to what do you believe? The perception is everything, and that's just like you said. It's hard to get past that media perception that the media had him guilty before anything had happened, and he was not aware. And the Speaker of the House said that he was not aware that this woman had been paid off.
Is that, you said he's going to be talking to council during the planning session on February 21st. Is that going to be open for citizens to hear? Or is that going to be conducted in executive session?
No, ma'am. It will probably be executive session.
Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine sort of a circus coming up around that. As we are going along our list of questions, let's shift gears one more time. Now, the discussion we just had probably would not have taken place under previous administrations, but it is now because there is a freedom of the press law for the Mvskoke Creek Nation, and again, my thanks for you to coming down and being so candid with us. But we have dealt with a lot of stories that you have had to deal with, the housing situation, and of course health and some other things like that, some internal actions that you've had to take. Again, we're talking perceptions, but what is your view of how the freedom of the press law has impacted what you do, the council, the Mvskoke Creek Nation, and all?
There are a lot of pros and cons to it. I do like the fact that they have the freedom to print whatever they choose to print, but most of the feedback that myself and our representatives get, we would just like to see more positive stories. It's because it's easy to find the negative things, and it's harder to find a positive story. And we just feel that sometimes the stories need to be more positive that are in the paper. It's like I say, it seems like there's a lot of negativity and negative articles published, and we would like to see some more positive things to make people excited about our nation instead of the negativity. It's easy, like I say, it's easy to find negative things about people, but when you find good things, most of the times those don't get published. There was Mr. McPeak. They named a building after Mr. McPeak, who's our tax commissioner, down at the campus at Connors. And that's something that we thought would be a good story. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think anything's ever been printed on it. And it's just things like that need to be brought out, need to be printed. We need to hear about. Like I said, more positive is one thing that I would definitely like to see. But I do understand that they have the freedom to print whatever they so choose. I don't have an issue with that, but I would just like to see, myself, would like to see more positive things come out of the media.
Well, let me reassure you, you are not alone in that comment. I mean, we have to deal with that every week in our editorial sessions. Like, here we go again, or we have to do this because it is such an issue. And on the flip side, we might be looked at as covering it up or something like that, or refusing to deal with it. But your comments and those of our citizens are taken to heart, and we do believe that we have that responsibility to do both sides of the stories, the shiny ones and the dark side, the happy stories, and sometimes even kind of we might characterize it as sort of fluffy, but that's part of what we want to do, and part of what our citizenship deserves. And so, we got you in mind when we're sitting there.
Yeah, and citizens, if you're listening, we're always open to ideas for stories and stuff. One of the things that I can say, as for working for the paper is we consider all leads that come in, and again, we do have to be balanced, but we do enjoy featuring citizens and hearing those feel-good stories, but we don't have the time nor the staff or the capabilities to really interview every single citizen, and a lot of times we don't know what is going on. I know you mentioned the building being named after Jerry McPeak. We actually didn't find that out until last week. So it's one of those things that we take any story ideas, and so citizens, if you hear something, and it goes for employees and anybody else too, give us a call. My phone number is 918-732-7762, and you can call me or email me at jmcbride@MvskokeMedia.com, and Mvskoke is spelled Mvskoke, and you can send me those leads that we can consider to write about.
Right, and mine is G5 with the same tail on it there. We also want to remind our listeners, if you've got a question or something on your mind, you can call us right now and be part of today's discussion with our National Council speaker. Give us a call or text 918-756-3646, and we would be delighted to hear from you. We have kind of looked into the newspaper archives and dug up a few things here and there that we thought would be worth mentioning, of course. One, we've seen changes to the mound itself. It was had undergone a massive renovation there. Just doesn't look the same, and things like that. What's going on there?
That started approximately a year and a half ago. We had a lot of leaks in there, a lot of mold. That building's 30 plus years old. There's been a lot of money spent on that building, and we decided as the Mound Oversight Committee that it was time to do something to the best of our ability without spending too much money on it. Yes, we did. The amount is approximately 1.5 million, but to get a new building would cost in that $5 to $6 million range, and there's been a lot of money spent on the mound building throughout the years, but we decided we would do a nice renovation to it and make sure there were no more leaks, handle the mold problem, and give it the look of, we wanted the arbor look, more traditional look. That's why we went with the rock all the way around. We have the clans symbols up around the top of the building, and I believe they're going to be backlit. I don't think the lights are in that yet, but it's just something that is going to be very nice. That we're obviously already proud of the mound building, but now with it being renovated, it's going to look like it should. That's one of the focal points of the complex is the mound building, and it's going to be something we should definitely be proud of for all of our citizens. It should be completed in approximately 60 to 90 days. And it's definitely something that we will be able to be proud of, and hopefully there won't be any more leaks. We haven't had any as of yet, and that's very nice, and hopefully this will eliminate the mold problem. Also, we helped better insulate it. The HVAC system, it'll have a new HVAC system with it, because that was out of control. It would be in the summertime, it would be 85 degrees and the heat's blowing.
Oh, yeah.
The heater's going. You couldn't get the AC going. Then opposite in the wintertime.
A lot of those Indian fans are working out real hard.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I've always been proud of that building. I like the way it fits into our cultural history. The architecture, the way, you can slip into it, and you kind of feel like you're slipping back in time almost to kind of look at it. As far as leaks go, reporters are always dependent on leaks. So let's hope that all of the, quote, leaks, unquote, don't stop. Question there, Jessica?
Is there a timeline when those renovations will be complete or anything? Because I know we've heard citizens say, it's been under construction a long time, and I know there's been a lot of issues and stuff with the building, and sometimes that takes time to make sure it's done correctly so that we can prevent any future disasters.
Yes, ma'am. It should be done in the next 60 to 90 days, depending on the weather.
Oh, that's a Quick turnaround. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
Can I cut some ribbons there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I'll be glad to get that project done. We as council will be glad to get that done.
Well, I guarantee you Mvskoke Media will be there to do that
Absolutely.
happy story.
Thank you very much.
Now, let me shift to something that may not quite be anywhere near that. The council has had to deal with a couple of censures in this past year. Practically one when you came into office you had to deal with, and then I understand there's one being discussed or actions being taken right now. What does this tell our citizens now? Is this a kind of what we call it, a new era, a new ray of sunshine, more taking on heavy responsibilities that might not have been dealt with? What do you think?
I'm going to ask you to elaborate and go into that just a little bit more detail. What exactly?
Well, right off the top of the year, we had a situation where one council member actually threatened another, I understand, and was fined and censured.
I think this would have been towards the end of fiscal year 2015, possibly towards the beginning of 2016, with former Representative Shirlene Aid and the censor there.
Right.
And then the most recently we have seen a hearing regarding Representative Dodie Barnett, and I think that's what we're kind of asking about, those two censures and what that means, that the council is doing, what you're looking for as far as disciplining your own.
Well, as far as Miss Aid, I'm not even going to comment on that because that's old news. And I do appreciate the question, though, but that's just something that I don't want to get into. Like I say, it's in the past. We're going to leave that in the past. And as far as Representative Barnett, that wasn't something that council initiated. It was initiated by a letter that came from the executive branch. And when I get something like that, not just myself, whoever is the speaker at the time, whenever you receive something like that from the executive branch, asking the council to address it, it's whoever's the speaker at the time, it's their position to turn that over to Internal Affairs. And Internal Affairs will do an investigation. And they will run their investigations, and they will look into it and see if there's something that is factual and non-factual, and they will address it that way, and then they will bring it in front of the full council with their recommendations, which is what they did, and therefore that's how it ended up at the public hearing. And it's an internal issue, and myself, I still consider it an internal issue, although it may not be that way and appear that way. Again, Internal Affairs handles the internal issues of council representatives. We are over our actions, and we have Internal Affairs Committee to oversee our actions. If we step out of line, that's what they're in place. That committee's job is to do.
Well, thank you, sir. We're going to take a short pause here, and we'll be back right after this little break here for more Mvskoke Radio and our discussion with National Speaker Lucian Tiger III. So please stay with us.
One Fire Casino in Altmulgee offers Ladies' Day every Monday with $5 match play, VIP days for seniors on Tuesdays, lunchtime match plays on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and several other great drawings and prizes throughout the weekend. Don't forget to take advantage of spinning the wheel on Sundays to win up to $5,000 cash. Be sure to check out the daily meal specials at Council Oak Cafe. There are exciting monthly giveaways with extravagant prizes. Come and play at One Fire Casino, where it really is okay to play with fire.
I started doing it when I was 11. I wanted to be just like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be Native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Stand by. Here we go again now. We're back here on Mvskoke Radio with our National Council Speaker, Mr. Lucian Tiger III, who has graciously consented to sit in with us today and answer some of the questions on our minds, and hopefully we'll take some of the questions that you have. So if you like, please give us a call, 918-756-3646, or you can text a message to that same number, 918-756-3646.
We actually had a question come up here on social media, and they were asking about economic development and how much return the tribe has seen from economic development entities like MNBE and One Fire. And can you talk about a little bit of the process of what council considers when they're looking at economic development in ventures, and how fast of a return council believes that they'll receive on these?
Start with MNBE. MNBE's been around for many years. They give right now, and this is again before I was on council, but MNBE receives some money from the nation, and they at this point in time are giving a minimum of $10,000 a month back to the Treasury of the nation. They've been doing that for several years, and are going to continue to do that for several more years until they get squared up with the money that was borrowed. And I believe it was $3 or $4 million is what I'm guessing. I don't hold me on that one. I'm not sure. I just know it was in the millions of dollars, and I don't have an exact number on that. But they are giving money back to the Treasury on a monthly basis. As far as One Fire, it was also something that was formed and done before I was on council. But that's something, and I'm just going to give you my thoughts on that. 3 years is when they are supposed to start returning money back to the nation. This is the start of the 4th year of One Fire. So at some point in time, we will be expecting information on them of what kind of distribution they will be able to give back to the nation. And we should have something like that at the BF&J meeting, on the quarterly meeting where One Fire comes in. They should be able to tell us what kind of distribution they will give back to the nation. But it's definitely something that is hard to put a finger on, because the money they were given was over a 3-year period, and that was $7.3 million a year over a 3-year period. And if you want someone to go purchase a business, buy a business, it's hard to show a return and a profit to where you can give back to the nation in that short a time. So in my opinion, businesses like that, it's going to take 5 years or so before you can really have money that you can give positive money back to the nation. Our citizens, as well as our employees, everyone that has money, has seen money moved from council to these other entities. It's definitely something that, yes, we want to see a return on the investment. No, we can't continue to go out and blow money, but they have invested in several businesses. They're a majority owner in several businesses. They have done some loans, and there's a lot of confusion on the loans, why they did loans. And in my opinion, is the reason they did loans was because you have a quicker return on your investment on loans. A lot of the loans that they've given out are 10% loans, and some of the representatives didn't really like that, but I can understand where they're coming from as One Fire organization, wanting to be able to fund their salaries, fund things that have to go on at Riverwalk, because Riverwalk was just kind of put upon One Fire. It's not something they wanted. They just inherited it, and they have had to use some of the monies that was appropriated to them for the upkeep and maintenance of Riverwalk, which when you look at it from that standpoint, that wasn't really fair to them either, because we gave them money, appropriated them money, the council did, to start businesses, form businesses. And they have bought in several businesses, as well as they've done loans, and those loans have had a good return. 10% return on loans is a very good return, something that is able to pay board member stipends, salaries of the CEO, so on and so forth like that. So it's not going to be easy to show a return after 3 years. 5 years, I believe they should be able to show a really good return on the monies that they were appropriated from the nation. Like I say, that was spread out over 3 years, and it was $7.3 million a year.
We do have a question from a caller on the line. We're going to ask Mr. Tiger to slip under those headphones there, and hopefully he can hear adequately.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is the caller there?
Yes.
Okay, you have a question?
Yes, we're trying to help our son fund his education through a technical school at the OSUIT campus.
Yes, sir.
And I believe Mr. Tiger had touched on something earlier. I didn't quite catch it all about maybe assisting with VOTEC training with Creek citizens.
Yes, sir.
Well, I was wondering if you could go back and elaborate more so on that. We were having a hard time finding really funding for him, and we're doing our best to do so, but I'm wondering if you could maybe touch on that again.
Yes, you would need to get in touch with Courtney Josie in education and training, because that was something. Well, that's echoing in my head. I took my headphones off, but I'm still with you. But Courtney Josie, education and training, that's who you want to get in contact with, because they do have a program now where they can help and assist with the IT schools, because that was something, trade schools is where we were had our citizens falling through the cracks. So definitely, and also you can reach me at the council office. I will help you any way that I can. I'll get you headed in the right direction and get you all the assistance that I can, as well as any other representative that you have their number. We can all help you get guided in the right direction.
Well, I appreciate that. I know that was kind of my feeling is I felt like he was falling through the cracks because of the funding that he really wasn't receiving. He did receive some from the tribe, which we were very appreciative of that. But it was just a drop in the bucket to really need it. So I just want you to know that I'm glad that you're addressing that issue, and I'll look into it some more. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate that. Like I say, please feel free to contact the council office. I will be back in the office after the interview, and I will get you any information that you might need and help you get going in the right direction.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. And if any other listener has a question, please give us a call, or you can text your question to 918-756-3646, our National Council Speaker, Lucian Tiger. Let me move on to the taro issue. Where are we with that? There was discussions that the taro office wasn't working and wasn't, giving us what we wanted. Contracting with more Creek businesses and more Creek employees, and then the bill discussion came up to eliminate it and then substitute another program. So maybe you can fill us in where that issue lies.
There's still some amendments that need to be made to the current legislation that was passed that involved changing the name of taro, moving it out from underneath education, putting it underneath Mr. McIntosh, and that's where it should have been in the beginning, in my opinion, because it didn't have anything to do with education. Don't know how it got there, but there was a lot of issues we had with taro, and the main thing was the fee. The 1.5% fee was always put in there, and again, I'm speaking for myself, not for the council as a whole, but I just felt that it eliminated some of the competitive bids that we were able to get, because when you have 3 taro vendors bidding on it, example I can give you is the One Fire bar expansion. They had to send it out to be rebid because it was $250,000 over where we should have been, where our tribal construction. So, and again, it was because when you're limiting yourself to your taro vendors, that eliminates a lot of your competitive larger companies that may be able to do it for a more competitive dollar figure. So that was the main issue that I had with taro. And then I was visited with one of the representatives, and we were even discussing paper. He had a bid on paper for his department at $25 a case for paper, but we were paying $65 because we were having to use taro vendors. It's just a lot of things that were kind of getting out of control that should not have been, and it wasn't, again, in my opinion, it wasn't explained to the employees of the nation that just because we want you to use taro vendors, you don't have to use a taro vendor if they're not as competitive. If you can find an outside vendor that is more competitive, yes, you will be able to use them. And that wasn't the case. In a lot of instances, they felt that they had to use a taro vendor, and I believe that it ended up costing us more money than it should have on certain things. But was it good for getting our employees jobs and putting them to work? Yes, it did work in that. The job bank worked really well. The River Spirit Margaritaville expansion used a lot of our employees through the job bank. It was very beneficial there. It took some time for it to get to work, but Representative Huft definitely had a lot of positive impact on that by making sure that our citizens were put to work. It's one thing that Representative Huft had an issue with us on the taro bill, and we understood where he was coming from. The employment of our citizens, that's what we want. We want our employees to have the first and best opportunity to be employed when it comes to the nation's jobs and the programs that we have. Any construction part, whether it's the Okima Hospital, whether it's reintegration, whether any project that the nation has, our citizens should have an opportunity to be employees on those construction sites first and foremost.
So is there a package now that has passed through the legislature and to be implemented?
Yes, that legislation did pass. I believe it was in December, but there are still some amendments to it because there were still a few things that were brought to Chief Floyd's attention after the legislation did pass. For instance, we have some citizens that are part owners of a business, but they might only be 20% owner, and they might employ 50% Native Americans, but yet they're unable to bid on stuff because they're not 51% owner. So it's just things like that we definitely need to readdress and look at. That way all of our citizens, even though they may not be the majority owner, if they're a realistic owner and not just the Native American that owns 51%, but really doesn't own 51%.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have that a lot. And
minority
that's
front,
yes,
I believe is the term.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you for that. But yes, that's something that was brought to Chief Lloyd's attention. That's why he is going to make some amendments and would like to make some amendments to that legislation to strengthen it even more.
What do you think the balance there is between making sure the nation gets a good price for services that are bid out, make sure that, you know, Creek citizens have an opportunity to have these projects, and what do you think the final goal is for the council and the nation as a whole in that respect?
Again, I want to give you my opinion. My opinion would be if when you bid things out, I would get 3 taro vendors and 3 non-taro vendors and see what the gap is, and I believe you would find there's going to be a large gap because, again, your taro vendors think that they are going to get the job irregardless just because they're taro, they're on the list. So they might be on a 130, 140% margin to where the other non-taro vendors are on a 75 to 80% margin. You know, they're just a big shift there in the dollar amount. So that's what I would like. If it were me, I would like to see 3 taro, 3 non-taro, and just see really where we are. That way you're holding your taro vendors accountable to where they can't hit the home run.
Another question in the financial vein. When we see the lists of legislation considered by the council, there are always a number of smaller grant requests that get passed. Received very well. Many of them, of course, are churches needing some sort of rehab or something like that. Other very worthy programs that receive funding. We hear questions, though, but you know, why so many individuals might get like scholarship help, or I think recently there was questions raised over, you know, why are we buying wrestling mats or basketball uniforms for some school? Isn't it their responsibility? So why are we doing that? So perhaps you can shed some information there on those smaller appropriations. Why do they still happen?
Sure, it's in our code book and it's law that's why you see some of them there's a 2/3 vote, some of them there are not. For instance, your schools, $2,500 per fiscal year is what your schools are eligible for as a donation, up to $2,500. Anything over that has to be a 2/3 vote because you're going above what the law allows, which, like I say, $2,500 per fiscal year for schools as assistance for, and you know, we require a letter from the superintendent stating that yes, this is something that we would like to see to benefit our school, whether it's playground equipment, whether it's wrestling mats, and also like the last one I believe you might be referring to is Henrietta.
Yeah.
Henrietta, same way. That program is not a part of the school, but they are hoping to implement the wrestling program into it. So that right there was something that was just done to help the students in the school that actually are students of the Henrietta school, but yet they don't have the program, therefore they didn't have the money to fund and get that stuff going. So that was just the nation's goodwill to help get those students, athletes, the equipment that they're going to need to start their wrestling program.
What does the council do to compare? You know, we have it in that we can make those donations to schools, but what does the council do to monitor how much of the nation's funds they're giving out to schools like that, as opposed to creating new programs or funding more educational scholarships, other programs and services for the nation?
There's a cap on the donation for your schools, and that's $50,000 per fiscal year. Anything above that has to be done through an appropriation.
In past years, the term earmark was used in the U.S. Congress for pet projects, shall we say, of a particular senator or representative, saying, well, that's a powerful person, let's keep them happy and give them, you know, $1 million to build a footbridge or a bike trail, or you know, perhaps help put up a building or something like that. The term earmark then kind of fell into wasn't used much. It kind of had a bad connotation attached to it. So are some of these things then, some of these requests then falling into those kinds of categories where they may be really favored by a council member and perhaps some sort of political kind of discussions going on about who gets what and how much?
No, I don't believe that's the case at all. I think everything's just on a case-by-case basis. And again, it's nothing one representative can do by themselves. It takes majority vote or 2/3 vote. So it either takes 8 or 11 votes to get something done. And I don't see that at all with this council, nor the first term that I was on council. I didn't see that at all. We all, in my opinion, try to do the best we can to serve our citizens as well as the schools to which have our citizens attend. We want to help everyone that we can because the state obviously is in a deficit, and that's something that we as a nation do the best we can to help this, especially the smaller schools, with anything that they may or may not need. With that being said, what was the school that we helped? Boy, I can't think of the name of the school right offhand, but we helped them with, I believe it was $100,000 so they could keep their doors open, and without the help of the nation, that school would not have been able to stay open. And that's just things that we do as a nation that a lot of the state representatives, House of Representatives don't see. Right. They want more tax, they want more and more from the nation through our gaming revenue, but yet they don't step outside the box and see, and it was Ryle School that we helped stay open. But it's just things that we do as a nation out of the goodwill, because again, it's our citizens that are attending these smaller schools. Even the larger schools, are needing assistance, and we do that again to provide for our citizens. And that's something that the state does not really acknowledge, and I really wish they would, because they continually are going to want more and more of our gaming revenue when they don't really see how much we're doing through these smaller appropriations up to large appropriations to help educate our citizens. And that goes back to, even though we don't have the program anymore, Mayon, that was a literacy program that we spent a lot of money on. We have Ball. We spend a lot of money on that. And as representatives, whether we agree or disagree, the intent was to help our citizens.
Right. Remember, the language department was really kind of tied up in a knot over the Mayon program. Let me ask you a thing about pipelines. Of course, we've seen all the national coverage about the Dakota Access and the XL pipelines, but in years past, there was council support for the pipeline, the Diamond pipeline, crossing through this part of the country. And then the nation has kind of gone on the record as opposing some of those other developments. Now, will the council be revisiting that support for the Diamond pipeline and possibly changing what's going on?
Yes, sir, we are. That's actually something that's going to be in the agenda this month. But let me back up in the beginning of this. We as representatives never heard really any feedback from our citizens, or we weren't that educated ourselves on the Diamond pipeline until the issue came up with Standing Rock. And since then, we have looked at that. But the main reason, this is over 800 square feet of land that is by Duck Creek Casino. The original path of that pipeline was going to come within 30 yards of our property line there. Mm-hmm. So the intent was, by the owner of the RV ranch, donated that land to the nation with the intent of moving that pipeline instead of 30 yards away from our property. Now it's some 250 to 300 yards away. We wanted to get it away because my opinion is, I had a couple of conversations with the AG's office, and it's something that they don't believe that we could ever get stopped because it doesn't cross enough of our tribal property. That's the main thing. It doesn't cross enough of it. And most of our citizens that does cross their property have already been paid. My father was included in that, and I believe it's probably been a year ago, that all that was said and done, and it comes within 50 yards of my father's house. And it's just something that he wasn't going to be able to stop. By himself, wasn't going to be able to stop. So he didn't have an option. He was basically put in a corner. But as far as tribal property, it doesn't cross that much of our property. And then also we are going to have some people that will be able to observe, make sure that they're not messing up anything that remains or anything like that. So they have agreed to come back, and I believe the dollar amount's going to be $450 a day for 2 of our citizens to oversee that. Ray Lynn has the information on that, but they are going to make sure that if anything does is uncovered, unearthed, that it will definitely be taken care of in an appropriate manner. But it is something that we are going to back up and readdress and look at it again this month on the LNC agenda.
Right.
So.
Right. I know the momentum from the Dakota Access situation has gone nationwide, and there are discussions of such opposition popping up here in Oklahoma, and I guess you might want to get your case out there and make sure people understand. We're coming to the tail end of our program. Jessica, any question?
What do you foresee the council taking on this next year, in 2017? What are your goals as speaker for 2017?
Transparency, again. I think that the council is doing a great job as a whole with being transparent. We try to put out as much information as we can. Any questions that the citizens may or may not have, they're more than welcome to call any of us as representatives, especially if it pertains to legislation, why you're doing this, why you're doing that, because some of the attachments are not put online because of confidentiality clauses. But after that legislation passes, we can be more free. Just like I spoke about the land acquisition across from River Spirit, is something that we couldn't speak about because of the confidentiality clause in there. But since then, that land has been closed on. It's ours, and we're able to speak about it. So it's definitely transparency, I think, is something that we as council as a whole are doing a great job being transparent, and just want to do the best we can for the nation as a whole. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are. We can't make everyone happy. We do the best we can, and like I say, we all enjoy our job. We enjoy helping our citizens. We enjoy seeing our nation prosper. And I think we will continue to move in the right direction, especially with healthcare. We're going to all work together and do the best we can to get healthcare straightened out. And it's something that our citizens are going to have to be patient with. It's something that's going to take, 2 or 3 years to get back on the right path. It's something that I don't think will ever be profitable. It's definitely something that we can get to where it's under control and we continue to take care of our citizens.
I would agree with you there, and I think that land acquisition near River Spirit was a pretty wise move, because from everyone we've heard of, those land values just going to go through the roof. I mean, people of major substance will be the ones living there, moving there, being able to afford it, and that the tribe got in ahead of it is very reassuring there.
Let me add to that real quick,
Sure.
Mr. Fife. One thing, and again, I'm speaking for myself, because I think at the end of the day, whoever owns the majority of the land within our boundaries controls what happens in our boundaries. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of land that we're going to have opportunities to purchase that I would like to see the nation purchase, because not for me, but for my kids' kids. It's something that,
Sure.
100 years from now, regardless of what's going on, if you own the majority of the land, you control what goes on within your boundaries. Even though some of the land we purchase, there may not be we don't know what we're going to do with it at this point in time, but it's something that we definitely need to have. I don't mean go spend millions of dollars and overpay for property. And that's something that I will say that this council, since I've been on council, we've done really a good job of making sure that we were paying appraised value or under appraised value for property. And I don't know if that's always been the case in the past, because there's some things that we purchased that might not have been the best purchase, but it was still something that representatives felt was a need.
Okay. Lucian Tiger, the third National Council Speaker. Sir, we appreciate you being with us today, being so candid in answering our questions. So we hope to have you back again and do it all over. We only have a little bit of time left. Let us run through a quick couple of real fast announcements, and we'll be out of your way. First of all, for those folks who are asking about wild onion dinners, here's one. Concharta United Methodist Church, Saturday, March 25th. That's at 19040 Garfield Road in Okmulgee. Get a hold of Brian on the Hill if you want more information. That's Saturday, March 25th, 11 to 3.
And there's going to be a prayer gathering, April 1st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. April 1st is a Saturday. It's going to be at the Creek County Fairgrounds in Kellyville. The flyer says to come and pray for Mvskoke Creek Nation, cities, towns, and Creek County, state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma and the United States. They're also looking for volunteers. There's meetings February 23rd and February 9th. If you want to volunteer for the event, for more information, contact Betty Pulver at 918-282-9381.
Thank you for sitting in and for listening to us here on Mvskoke Radio. This is Gary Fife saying, Mado, Mabo Hedges good. You've been listening to Mvskoke.